Okay, so this morning we're going to be covering what the Community Impact Fund is and how often it runs, who's eligible to apply, some recent changes to the application form and the eligibility criteria, what information you'll need to submit to support your application, how you go about applying. We'll have a little look at what makes a good application and tell you a bit about the guidance documents. And we'll also look at some frequently asked questions that we get about the grants programme. And do the next slide, Becky. Right, sorry, you're gonna have, we're really sorry, it's running really slowly this morning for some reason. We're just waiting for the next slide to move forward. Okay, so what is the Community Impact Fund? So I know some of you will already be familiar with this grant programme, as you'll have received funding via the programme previously, but for those of you who are new to it, the grants programme helps voluntary community, faith and social enterprise sector organisations and registered charities to build stronger communities across Liverpool and Merseyside. So the programme focuses on 4 priority areas, which is part of the LCVS poverty strategy. So those priority areas are health, education, income stability and arts and culture. We have 2 rounds of community impact funds every year. So normally in springtime and then also in the autumn, which is the one that we're looking at today. So we're particularly interested in funding projects that support people and communities to combat the problems caused by the current cost of living crisis. And we all are fully aware of just how difficult things are at the moment for organisations and individuals. And we can provide a grant of up to £3,000 maximum. So just to put things into a broader context about LCVS's poverty strategy, it's about us actively prioritising the use of the resources that we have to look at where need is really and try to make a difference in supporting the eradication of poverty. So we see health, education, income stability and arts and culture as key factors towards reducing the impact of poverty. We're fully aware of the barriers to addressing poverty, areas which I'm sure many of you and your organisations are working within, around income instability, poor health and well-being, poor educational opportunities, barriers to achievement and lack of engagement with culture, so that you can see what you can be. So we would expect funded projects to be able to demonstrate that their project contributes towards this strategic priority via one or more of the 4 areas that we want to fund. So in terms of eligibility, eligible organisations, they need to be a constituted and not-for-profit organisation. And obviously, this encompasses a lot of different legal structures and governance structures, but it includes registered charities, not-for-profit, unincorporated associations, not-for-profit companies limited by guarantee. And the important thing that we try to hammer home when we're speaking about eligibility and the documentation that you're asked to provide, which we'll look at further on, is about it being really clear that the organisation has an asset lock or a dissolution clause in its constitutional document, because otherwise we can't fund things that don't have that asset lock or dissolution clause. Need to be established for 12 months and have previously delivered activities. have a bank account in the name of the organisation, which requires at least 2 unrelated people to sign cheques and to make cash withdrawals, and have a suitable adopted constitution or set of rules in the name of the organisation. We're also asking that you have a child or adults or both at risk safeguarding policy and procedure where applicable, and evidence that staff and volunteers are DBS checked if the roles that your volunteers and staff are taking on require that type of check. Have their registered address in Merseyside, or their business address or main place of operation in Merseyside. And importantly, you should not have received CIF grant funding in the previous 2 rounds. So you should not have received funding previously in spring of this year or autumn of last year. Otherwise, you will not be eligible for this round. That's something that we had to introduce just purely because demand outstrips the amount of money that we have to give out for each grant programme. So we're trying to do it in a fair and equitable way so that all organisations get an opportunity to access the CIF grant. Okay. And then you will be asked to attach the different documentation on the application form itself as well. So just to tell those who are new to the CIF programme, and people who've applied before as well, about the changes to the eligibility criteria and application process. As I've said, CIF runs twice a year. If you've been funded in the previous 2 rounds, you won't be eligible for this round. We're now using a new grant management software system called Plinth. So when you follow the link that's provided to the application form, you'll be taken to the Plinth portal, where you're able to set up a little account and complete your online application form. You will be asked to answer 4 sort of eligibility questions at the very beginning. And that's really to do with the support and documentation that we're asking you to provide, just double checking that your organisation fits the eligibility criteria, and also whether you have been funded in the previous 2 rounds, because if you answer yes to some of those questions, then the system will not let you continue. It will let you know that you're not going to be eligible for this round. Also, we would really ask you to double check the documentation that you're attaching to just make sure that it's the right document, because we receive such a high volume of applications. It's impossible for us to contact everybody to say, you've provided us with X, Y, and Z. And in those circumstances, we tend to have to make an application ineligible because we just don't have time to chase up anything that's been incorrectly submitted. Also, the word count has been slightly reduced when you're asked to provide information about your project and activities. And again, it's just there's 2 of us assessing grant applications. And I think the last round we received about 120 applications, so it's quite a big job, and that's partly why we've had to introduce some of these changes. So when you follow the link, you'll be taken to this landing page on the Plinth portal. I know you can't see that very well at the moment, but it's just a recap of what the funding programme is about, the 4 priority areas, and it also has links to the application guidance documents. It has links to case studies, so you're able to look at some of the projects that have previously been funded through the CIF programme. It'll take you to our data protection and privacy statement. And it'll also take you to the eligibility criteria. So you should be able to access all the information that you need just from that page before you actually start to fill in the application form. Okay, so when it comes to evidence of eligibility, just to recap, if you've received CIF funding in the previous 2 rounds, you won't be eligible for this round. Again, about just checking whether your organisation fits that eligibility criteria. And I would say at this point, if you're unsure, then please contact us at the grants at lcvs.org.uk email address before submitting your application. Once it's submitted, it's going to be too late for us to kind of talk through things with you if you have questions about any of the support and documentation. So please just contact us first. You've got a month pretty much to fill in and submit the application. Also at this point, just to let you know, you can save the application and go back to it as you're going along. So that's obviously handy to know. You haven't got to do it all in one go. Is your organisation based in Merseyside? So we cover Liverpool and Merseyside, but that is excluding Halton. And can you provide the necessary information to support your application? So those documents, your governing document, your accounts, your last set of accounts. If you can't provide accounts, then some proof of income and expenditure for the last 12 months. A bank statement, which should show us the name of your organisation. Sorry about that. Don't know why we're getting so many interruptions this morning. Yeah, as I was saying, a bank statement with the name of your organisation, address, your sort code, your account number, because we'll use that bank account to transfer your grant funds in if you're successful, and a copy of your safeguarding policy and procedure. So we talked about evidence of legal structure and that governing documents. Just to say a little bit more about that, we generally mean a copy of your constitution, a trust deed, your memorandum of articles or memorandum of association. But what this governing document explicitly needs to include is that it clearly defines that your organisation is charitable, has charitable purposes, community purposes. It states that you're not for profit, or it prohibits the distribution of profit, including the distribution of dividends to members. And as mentioned, an asset lock or a dissolution clause, which is about, in the event that the organisation had to be dissolved, any of its remaining assets will not be distributed amongst its members. It will be transferred to another not-for-profit organisation or used for charitable purposes elsewhere. If you're unsure, we've provided in the slides, and it's on the sort of criteria document that you'll be able to access as well. There's some links there which will demonstrate and provide examples of the types of documentation that we're talking about. So as I said, with the bank statement, the name, the address, the sort code and account number of the bank account where you would want your grant to be transferred into. Ideally, the most recent set of accounts, but if it's not possible, obviously organisations are doing their accounts at different points throughout the year. An income and expenditure sheet, which clearly illustrates the financial activity for the last 12 months. And a robust safeguarding policy and procedure. So obviously for some of your organisations, if you're only working specifically with children or with adults, then that policy and procedure needs to be specific to that group of beneficiaries. So I was just waiting for the slideshow to move. It's very slow this morning. That's totally frozen for some reason. Can you turn yours round? I'm gonna have to do something a bit strange here and read off Becky's screen because I can't read off my own. Oh, there we go. Right, so just to finish with some useful hints and tips. Keep the priority areas that you've selected in mind when you're providing answers. Those 4 priority areas, you know, we're focusing in on those. So we want you to explain really within your answers how you're meeting one or more of those priority areas. The word count will help in keeping answers brief and concise. And we've put some pointers on the application form guidance document to help you think about the kind of things that you might want to include when you're answering those questions and the kind of things that we're looking for when we're assessing the applications. The word count that's given, it's a limit, it's not a target. So if what you're asking for funding for, you can say in you know a brief few sentences, that's absolutely fine. We're not judging you on your word count, the amount of you know the amount of sentences within that application. Okay. Once you get into the application form, you'll be asked to complete a budget table listing the full costs of your project. So that is how much in total is it going to cost for you to deliver your project. And we'll also ask you for the items that you require the CIF funding for. So that is a slight change to the way we've asked in the past for information about budget. So in the table, you'll see, you know, you can fully cost things. So say your project in total costs £24,000, but within that £24,000, you're asking us for funding to £1,000 towards utilities, £1,000 towards staff costs, and £1,000 towards activities. Then there's another space where you can say that's what you want the £3,000 for, if that's what you're applying for. There are some pointers to help with this in the application form guidance document. If you can be as clear as possible regarding the cost of each item, it just makes it really easy for us when we're looking at the overall amount being requested, and it makes it easier for the funding panel as well when they're looking at applications. So if you're asking for staff costs, for example, you can tell us a little bit about the rate of pay, you know, the number of hours, how many weeks or months that's going to enable that staff member to deliver the project for. That kind of detail is really helpful to us. You'll also be asked to provide details of any match funding that you've requested from other funders. And for us, again, it's about us being able to see if we're to fund a project, how viable it is in terms of funding that you might have requested from other external funders. So just to be mindful about what you're asking us for and what you're asking external funders for. Obviously, for us, we will fund staff costs and utilities, whereas a lot of other funders, particularly for small grant programs, won't necessarily fund those things. So it's just to have a think about where you want to like where you want to ask for that funding from. And that's because we might not be able to fund projects where the items in the cost breakdown can't be utilised without match funding being confirmed. Okay, just waiting for the next slide. Okay, so in terms of how you can apply, you can head over to the LCVS website and visit the grants page, where you'll find a link to take you to the Plinth portal and the CIF application form. We really strongly recommend reading the application form guidance and the criteria document before you get started. We know that your time is precious, and to get halfway through an application form and then discover that you're not eligible for it for one reason or another is really disheartening. So just double check before you get started. Once you've submitted your application form, you'll receive a notification email, and that'll also have a link so you can view your application. You'll also be able to, to download it or print it out, so you've got it safely stored. And if you experience any technical issues when you're completing the application, please use the chat function, because that will take you straight to a technician at Plinth who will be able to help you straight away. Obviously, they have access to the system. They can see where you're up to. They'll be able to see what part you're struggling with, and they'll be able to help you there and then. So it's no good emailing Plinth. I mean, you can, but they might not respond for a little while. Whereas if you use the chat function, you'll get some support straight away. Any inquiries regarding eligibility or supporting documents or the content of the application, please come to us about. We're not the techie ones when it comes to the online application bit. Plinth are far better place to help you with that. But anything else to do with the actual, eligibility and the kind of answers and help that you might need with the other bits and bobs, me and Becky are more than happy to help you with those. Okay, that is the presentation. As I say, we'll send everybody a copy of the slides. And I'm really, really sorry for the technical issues that we've had this morning, because I'm sure that means people's probably missed out on a few things. I'm just looking at the chat now. Okay, so somebody said, can I just check you don't have to be all of the things in point 1 eligible org types? I think, do you mean...
Do you want me to bob in? Can you hear me okay?
Sorry, yeah. Is it
Yeah. I'll just clarify what I meant. So when I read it, it reads as if you've got to be all of those types. You've got to be a charity and a faith organisation and a social enterprise. I think it's just the word "and." Did it mean or? So you can be any one of those types.
Or, yeah.
So I was just checking. Yeah, I thought it was unlikely that someone would be all of those types. So
no, we'll note that though and change the words, and thank you.
All right, brilliant, thanks.
In terms of evidence to prove DBS, I think it just what we're really looking for in safeguarding policies and procedures is just information around safe recruitment practices. So obviously, if your organisation is working with adults at risk and your staff or your volunteers are having I suppose what used to be known as sort of regular unsupervised contact with beneficiaries, then there would generally be an expectation that there be a DBS check undertaken. So it's just so we can see that safeguarding, safe recruitment practices are in place and there's awareness of them. It's really more about...
That was my question. I just wasn't sure if you needed specific, like, here's an invoice of all the DBSs, or whether it was okay that it was just in policy.
Nothing like that.
Whether you wanted specific evidence of DBSs as opposed to our policy, but that's fine. I understand that.
No,
Thank you.
No. Has anyone else got any questions? No? Okay. On that note then, I know you're all very busy people. So we'll send the slides out when we're finished, and the recording should be available on Monday if you go to the grants page on the LCVS website. And then we'll hopefully hear from you soon through your applications. But any questions, please email me and Becky at the grants email address. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.
Oh, there's a few questions.
Oh, is that? Oh, sorry. Just seeing there's questions. When we set about the banking, it's having 2 signatories on the account, and generally 2 unrelated signatories if possible. We don't normally have 2 organisations team up on a grant, only because it makes it more difficult because we're doing all of that due diligence stuff. So I would say it needs to just come from 1 organisation. Any questions though? As I say, email us, contact us. We're happy to give you a call and have a chat about anything because new things come up all the time. And you know, we're not the complete expert on grants. We want to have conversations with organisations as well about how we can make the process as accessible as possible for you.
Yeah, do you think that the only question that I had then was about the banking, because we've done it for like 4 years now. We've only had 1 person operating our bank for us, and that was it. So if we need to add someone on, we'd just have to do that before we send the application in, won't we?
Yeah. As I say, it's just that safety mechanism around finances. It's normally 2 signatories.
Yeah, because we're looking.
I know it's very dependent on what kind of organisation.
Organisation you are, yeah. Because we are constituted and we've got all that in place. We're basically St. Helens. We do a lot of sensory stuff and activities for children, obviously in poverty. We do all sorts from football camps, sport camps, sensory gaming clubs and stuff, and we do park events and stuff where people come to us and play games. But
if you want to email us and just give us a little overview of what the question, and then we'll double check it. As I say, new things come up every time we run the grant program, and we'll check it out first before we give you a definitive yes or no.
No problem, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Cheers, love. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, any more questions before we go? Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you all very much for joining us. And as I say, don't hesitate to contact us if you need some help with the application.